Alright, little lunchtime Ask Me Anything, live here on Periscope. Just in case anybody wants to get in on this. Hopefully somebody shows up. Try this a couple times and nobody ever shows up, so I just kind of assume nobody cares. And that's okay. It's lunchtime, you're stuffing your face with all kind of goodness. So if you show up, good. If you don't, it's on you. I had a question earlier from Brian Fiffle, who asked, in general, if I wanted to sell my Star Wars comic book collection, issues 1 through 107, and the annuals all together, and they are in good to really good shape, what kind of numbers would I reasonably ask? Well, that's a tough question. Auctions right now are ranging anywhere from $800 all the way up to $8,000 for a complete set of Star Wars comic books. The original Marvel Star Wars comic books that Brian's referencing, issues 1 through 107 and the annuals. So it's really hard to say. Auctions will yield, or sales for comic books will yield, whatever the buyer wants to pay for them. It's really not controlled by the seller as much as the seller would like to believe that they control the value of the comic as far as what they're going to get. You can ask whatever you want for a comic book. The challenge is getting what you're asking for the comic book. And when you're looking at Star Wars comic books that are in good to really good conditional shape, that's really at the bottom of the scrape as far as most collectors will want to go for adding that large of a purchase into their collection. So let me just pull up some statistical stuff real fast. Let's see here. Looking at the original 1 through 107, just to give you an example. Issue number 1 in good shape, which by official grading standards, good shape is around a 2.0. You're looking around 15, maybe $20 street value for this comic. Now, you get up in range in this comic book, and right now it's just off the charts because of The Force Awakens that's going to hit the theaters in December. Star Wars comic books are all the rage. And even at San Diego Comic-Con that happened this past weekend, most vendors were seeing a spike in purchases of Star Wars comic books. That could be because of speculators, hedge bet buyers, people that are buying low to sell high. Who knows? But a lot of vendors are seeing a spike in Star Wars comic book sales, and you're seeing these comics that are in a 7.0 range and above, easily going for $150, $200, $300, $400, $500 for a Star Wars #1. And I'm not even talking about the 35-cent version. The 35-cent variant, which only had originally 1,500 copies ever printed, is going for close to $20,000 right now. It's outlandish what people are asking for that comic book. But again, there were only 1,500 of those ever printed in the entire world, and those that have survived make that even more valuable, because out of the 1,500, how many actually survived? So I guess the net is ask what you think you can get, but understand that in the end, it's the buyer who ultimately controls what actually gets purchased and the value of the comics. So hopefully that helps you. It's interesting that a lot of people that are buying comics now seem to be speculators. In fact, I've got a friend of mine who is directly involved in the industry, and they're seeing a lot of comics being bought up in boxes. So somebody will tell their local comic shop, I want so-and-so comic, but I want an entire box of them. And don't open the box. Just give me the box that you get from Diamond. And the speculation around that is that they are going to hold on to these sealed boxes from Diamond and try to resell them later at a astronomically high price for the comics, because they're sealed, they're not touched. The last time that they were touched by whatever loads the comics in the box at the publisher or at the printing press. So that's what some LCSs are seeing now, and that concerns me about the industry, because true comic book fans, the people like me and you perhaps, that buy our comics, that read our comics, that maintain our collection very meticulously, we're falling second in line to those who are buying large quantities of, let's say, a single issue left in a box, and they never read them. Because the local comic shops that are typically mom and pop owned, they're out to make $1. Don't fool yourself. And because of that, the local comic shops will cater to whoever spends the most dollars. Now, I'm not going to say that's all local comic shops, but certainly comic shops have a responsibility to themselves to turn a profit. So who are they going to lean towards with the attention when somebody comes in the door? Somebody who's buying a single comic, or somebody who's buying several hundred comics, potentially? Because let's just call it Spider-Gwen. When that came out, people were buying it through the droves. And now you could buy that same comic online for either cover price or less than cover price. It just, for whatever reason, it fell short as far as the popularity goes. Some of the Star Wars comics are falling short in a single issue or a small micro series, but for the most part, they're hotcakes right now. This is the year of Star Wars, and I'm a little biased because of all of this stuff behind me, but it's true. People are on a Star Wars high right now. I've never been happier. I've been a lifelong Star Wars fan, so for this year being just as hot and popular as it was when The Phantom Menace came out, it's good for me. I get to get a lot of product and content and whatnot. Now, I've been a Star Wars fan since the very beginning, back in '77. And even back then, it wasn't as big now. Of course, we didn't know the storyline like we do now. We didn't know the characters like we do now. We haven't seen the evolution of the Star Wars universe like we have now. But it's just interesting that young kids and middle age and even older people are just gaga right now over Star Wars. Now, there were a couple of people that were complaining about a couple of vendors that went to San Diego Comic-Con who previously stated they were never going again. I'm not going to name names, but if you follow the industry at all, you kind of know who I'm talking about. And this particular vendor produced a series of videos throughout the San Diego Comic-Con event, from the organization and loadout at their shop, to the arrival, to the booth setup, to the pre-day fiascos, and even through the very end. And it was just interesting to hear the take that a lot of people don't understand about these conventions, because attendees show up, but they complain about prices. And remember, like I said, even with your local comic shop, they've got to make money. If they don't make money, they're going to go out of business. So they shared some information about vendors at the con, and it's something that I already understood about the industry, but the reality is these conventions aren't cheap. So an average booth at a small convention, maybe in your local town, and I'm not talking about the Comic-Con convention, I'm talking about any locally produced comic convention of sorts, has a booth fee of probably $500. And I've done conventions before where I've rented a booth year after year after year for showcasing my services. And the booth fees were right around that rate, about $550 for a booth. And so you have to factor in, all right, how many clients do I have to win over? How many products do I have to sell in order to retain or get that money back of my investment to the convention? And then I have to factor in my time, how much my time is worth, and I have to get that money back. And after all, you have to figure out, is it worth it? So a $550 booth fee is a lot easier to swallow if things don't particularly go so well than the cost for San Diego Comic-Con if you are a comic vendor going out there, because the booth fees are into the thousands of dollars. Then the cost to get there. A lot of these vendors, you're not showing up with a couple of long boxes for San Diego Comic-Con if you're going to be a vendor. You're showing up with a tractor trailer full of books and merchandise and whatnot that could cost several $1,000s just to do that, just to get your stuff there. So when you factor in everything, this particular vendor said that they had to clear at least $1,000 an hour in sales just to break even. That's a lot of comic books. That's a lot of $10 characters or $20 action figures or whatever you're selling at your booth. You have to piddle a lot of stuff to make about $1,000 an hour in net sales. So I don't fault vendors for charging what they do. So you have to go there as an attendee with a mindset that you're going to spend money. You're at a premium event. So you're going to spend money for whatever it is that you buy. A bottle of water, a hot dog, a comic book, a trade paperback, an action figure, whatever it is that you're going to get, you're going to spend money. And probably more money than you would spend if you sat back at your house and bought it through an auction or through an online e-tailer, because they have a lot more time and traffic flow through a online e-tailer or an auction that you don't have to worry about spending out $1,000 worth of sales an hour. So just keep that in mind if you are attending a convention, that if you do pay a premium for whatever it is, it's almost like you're paying for the experience to be wherever that product is sold, and you get to buy the product there at the same event, so you kind of get the benefits of both worlds. Now you have the ticket fees and whatever else it costs you to get to these conventions, but the reality is you could probably get that book or product cheaper outside of the con than you did inside the con. So don't get angry at the cost of merchandise or products at Comic-Con, because it's a premium event. There was another vendor that posted, he's a t-shirt vendor, and they posted that they had just about every t-shirt that a comic book fan could want. They had some sort of a t-shirt that captured their fandom on a t-shirt. And there are 2 t-shirts that they couldn't sell very many of, if not any at all, this year. One of them, I believe, was Gumby. Or have I ever been a fan of Gumby? And the other one, surprisingly, is Minecraft. Minecraft has been hot for years. And last year they said they couldn't keep the Minecraft shirts on the shelf. And this year, nobody really was grabbing for them. So it's all cyclical. It's all subjective to whatever's happening today, not yesterday, not tomorrow. And right now, a lot of people are coming back from Comic-Con in San Diego, and they're feeling a little deflated. I didn't go. I wish I would have had the chance to get a sponsorship or to be able to go on my own dollar, but I didn't. And I don't feel too heartbroken over it, but maybe one day I'll be able to go and experience the San Diego Comic-Con. It's the mecca of all comic conventions. A lot of local conventions aspire to be what San Diego Comic-Con is, and they should. For a event coordinator or an event company, San Diego Comic-Con is a money pit for the actual event owner. It's a money pit. It really is. I mean, it costs a lot of money to put on these conventions, but the cost that you are reaping back both in booth fees and merchandise sales that maybe you get a percentage of, or the celebrity attendees that you're going to get a percentage of whatever that they're selling, be it photography sessions or autograph sessions. All of these result in a potential revenue in stream for the event itself. So just think about that the next time you're going to a con, whether it be a local con or a nationally recognized con like a Comic-Con, a Wizard World Con, or whatever. Just respect the fact that most of the vendors that are coming that aren't media are there to make a dollar, and their profit margins are slim to none, and they have to turn a large net revenue per hour in order to gain that reason to show up again next year or next time. Because if they don't, it doesn't make any sense just to show up. I'm not going to show up as a vendor to Comic-Con and not make a profit. That's what a lot of these vendors would say, and I agree with them 1,000%. So when you show up, know that your dollar is going to not only support the con, to keep the con going, but it's also to keep the small mom and pop local comic shops to be able to come back again. So support those local comic shops. If your local comic shop is going to be at your local comic convention, show up and give them some love. If they're not there, certainly show some of the other local comic shops some love. Buy some stuff from them. But also understand that the media is there to blitz whatever project or merchandise they're all about as well. So you have to understand that you're but a blip on a radar to a large media company. I mean, you matter. Don't get me wrong, you matter. But you matter this big to a large media company versus this big to a local comic shop that is ran by a family locally. So just keep that in mind. Nobody else showed up for this live Periscope Ask Me Anything, so I thought that I would rattle on a little bit about the comic convention that just happened and shed some light to some things that a lot of people don't understand. The cosplay is fun. The media is fun to see what they've got to say. But realistically, a comic convention should be about the comics. Should be about the fandom to comics. If you engage in any other thing outside of that for the media or the cosplay, that's great. But that doesn't support your local business community. That's just my take on it. It's my opinion. You're entitled to yours. And so at this point, since nobody else has showed up, I'm going to close out this Periscope live Ask Me Anything. Hopefully, if you watch it on replay, you'll like it. Maybe you'll tell somebody about it. Tell somebody about me doing live Periscopes. I talk about more than just comics, but certainly I want to start doing these on a more frequent basis. So follow me over on Twitter, at Scotty D Online. Over there on Twitter is the handle. You can follow me over on YouTube. The channel is Interface Webcast, all one word. It's all linked in my Twitter account. So as long as you get over there, at Scotty D Online on Twitter, you'll see all the links, and you can follow me and like me and do whatever else you want to do in the social media. So anyways, we'll see you next time, Web World, and be good to each other. Later. May the force be with you.